on defense that makes them so effective?
Yeah, they do a great job of, first of all, just pressuring the basketball and making it hard for you to get into what you want. Like if you play outside of the middle third, they're going to try to keep you on the sideline. If you get close to that baseline, you're getting an immediate trap, whether it's a post up or a drive. They're coming quick and coming often and being really aggressive right there. You got to be able to make that play. Probably makes a lot of sense to stay away from that if you can. Sometimes you get stuck in low clock plays and they're pinning you to a side. And, you like I said, you really want to stay away from that as much as you can, but when you do it, you got to be able to make a play. And that's really difficult. They just have a good system. Sometimes people change a lot and, they don't. They stick with, like, very similar to us, even though schematically we're different. They stick with their rules and they stick with their aggressive rules, and it just depends on like what you're trying to do. Like sometimes people will just continue to do the same things, and that kind of feeds into them. You have to respect the success that they've had and understand that you have to have some tweaks and some understanding so you don't go down that rabbit hole.
Are there correlations between what worked with Toppin and how you guys will approach Jefferson, or ways that he's unique and you're gonna have to have?
Yeah, I would say their other personnel makes it different, just because Milan is so dangerous. He has a 74% effective field goal percentage. Like that's out of this world, right? Fletcher Laurie, I think, has like a 63, which is really, really good, one of the best in the country. But to have a 74% effective field goal percentage for a high volume guy, so you have to know where he's at. They got 3 guys that average 18 points. It speaks for itself. But more things for Jefferson than that is just a lot of times guys that can pass, they can't dribble the basketball and pass when they have size. They can pass as long as they don't dribble, if that makes any sense to you. He can dribble the basketball and make a play for himself, but also make a play for other people. And that's pretty impressive for somebody with that kind of frame. He's got great strength, he's got great mobility, he's got great skill, and just a good all-around player.
How much?
Go ahead.
How much tweaking did you do in the offseason to your basic offensive principles to make Oscar and Trey kind of work together as they have?
Yeah, we did breakdowns from day one, just to be able to, especially from a short roll standpoint, pocket passes, just so we could coexist together. Because when you play bigger people, that's the key. You have to have good spacing. You have to have good understanding of what's going on. I think in a regular post up, it's pretty simple. But I think when you're playing in the middle of the floor and you're getting those pocket passes and you're playing, you have to have an understanding of where you need to be. And each scenario is a little bit different, but there's way more similarities than there is differences.
It seems like there's been a little bit of movement back to these home and homes instead of neutral site games, and you and Michigan State and Alabama seem to kind of be leading that trend to a degree. What's the value in that versus doing neutral?
Yeah, well, the neutrals are important too, because you're going to play NCAA tournament games neutral, right? And so getting into different venues, I think, helps guys, because you're just adjusting to a, not a traditional arena, kind of like, when I say traditional arena, I mean, for like if you go to Iowa State or you go to Michigan State or you go to Purdue, like you got your traditional arenas there. But it's your fans, right? And it's normally, I think the pat on the back needs to go to the team that starts the series on the road. That's the hardest piece. So like Iowa State deserves a lot of credit here. You try to offset some things, and we did it with Marquette, and obviously we have 2 home games. A lot of times in these scenarios, we have 1 home game, we have 1 road, then we have 3 to 4 neutral games in there. And that's about the balance, but we're working really hard for next year right now. You got to get out in front of things, you got to present things. It helps when TV, is part of that package too, because TV's going to pick it up. But if you can get something of this nature to where, like, now you have a noon game, now you're on CBS, that's pretty cool. You're on Fox, like this is just some of the marquee matchups that you have on the home and homes. But No, it makes sense, right? I think it makes you better. I always kind of call it picking your losses. You know, obviously you're not trying to lose, you're trying to win. But if you get beat by Iowa State or Iowa State gets beat by Purdue, you're not getting beat up. You know, when it comes to seeding, they're actually going to look at it as a positive.
Is there a point in the season where you have to say to yourself, coaching staff, hey, you've shown enough now that people are gonna know kind of what we're all about here. Now we have to prepare for the counter punches versus the initial punches?
No, I think schematically you have to look at what somebody else does and you have to respect them as much as anything. It just depends on if you're thinking offensively or defensively, right? So like you have to understand like Iowa State and how they go about their business and what they're doing. It's not that they're going to change against us, it's just when they're going to mix some things up. That's going to be, are they coming after a timeout? Are they coming after a free throw? Like a lot of times to get it organized, or are they just going to be that aggressive all the time, right? But no, in terms of what we do, it's the details offensively, more than anything. Defensively, we change up. A lot of times, we have one defense, but we double the posts. Sometimes we don't double the posts, but we got 3 different ways to double the post. We got multiple ways we deal with ball screen stuff. Sometimes we don't guard people that aren't that skilled, whatever it might be. And so like that's our adjustment. That's how we kind of change. And there's sometimes we don't change. Like we stick to our base. You got to have a foundation in what you do defensively. Like and then you build out from your foundation, and that's where you adjust and change from that. You're like, okay, this has really worked for us, but will this work against them? Like you got to be able to have a good feel there. And then sometimes you make a mistake and you got to make that change during the game. And then there's other times that you don't know whether to change or not because they're not doing their job. And that's the most important thing that I always harp on. When you do your job and it doesn't work, then I have to change. But if you don't do your job, how do I know this is going to work or not work? Obviously I felt it was going to, or I wouldn't have done it in the first place. So that's really kind of where we make adjustments.
Yeah. Iowa State's 3-point offense is one of the best in the country. How important is it to limit that, and how are you going to slow them down?
Yeah, well, I think any time you deal with guys that can shoot the basketball, if you can keep the ball in front of you and you can stay out of rotations, you're going to help your adjustment to those shooters as the ball moves quickly. I think that's the key. But if you get behind plays, they have some guys that need more than one defender, and that's what puts you in a bind. So you deal with guys like Jefferson, Lipsy coming off a ball screen. You deal with them, and you're going to have 2 people on the ball at times. Now that's why you got to disrupt the basketball so they can't move it quickly. Because when they move it quickly, now you're going to be in that rotation, and that's where most people will get you. As you get behind a play, you get into the rotation. So it's a huge concern. Like anytime somebody scores 130 points and makes 23 threes, I think it's a flag that goes up in the air, right? And so like to say they have our attention would be an understatement.
Okay.
Doesn't mean we're going to be able to stop them, but man, they were electric the other night.
Did you see Oscar as a pretty good passer when he was coming in, and just I guess what is his talents there meaning right now offensively?
Yeah, he's done a good job, before, especially in this last year because his usage was higher. You could see that he had a good feel to pass the basketball. That he actually, I think, enjoys passing more than he does scoring. But no, TK's a great passer. Braden is the best passer. And so when you have 3 guys out there that are that way, Fletch is very intelligent, knows what's going, gets the ball moving. So it makes for good offense. It's no different than Iowa State, right? They got good shooters, but it doesn't mean anything if the guys can't pass. Guys like Lipsy and Jefferson are really good passers. They got a feel for the game. They understand what's going on. Milan has a feel for the game. So that's what makes it. Their skill level's just not in their shooting. It's in their passing and their handling too.
Brian, last one.
How much does it mean to your offense to not only be able to play big effectively, but also for people to have to deal with breaking the speed, especially starting off the ball and sprinting into those handoffs?
Yeah, we do a lot with him having it, but then when we get him off the basketball, and we used to do a lot of just kind of talking about giving it up and getting it back, just to make his man work, and then when he's working now, Because at the end of the day, like if you got to start and finish with the basketball all the time against a great defensive team like Iowa State, it gets really hard. And that goes both ways, you know. So if you can get off the ball some and get movement, and the whole thing you're trying to do is just get people behind plays. And so if he can get some space, he can get some separation. The guys that are at the best defensively are those guys that don't allow separation. They stay right on their heels and they do it for 40 minutes. The guys you can get separation from, it causes too much help, and then now that's how he exposes people.